In a recent video, I talked about every team's worst draft pick since 2015, so today we are going to be doing the opposite of that. We're going to talk about every team's best draft picks since then. Some of these guys will be first round picks, some of these guys will be selected on day 2 or day 3. It's pretty much who's made the most impact on their team since they drafted them, and there may be a little bit of a QB tax. One thing I didn't really do was give credit to somebody drafted first, second, or third overall. Pretty much you just had a very easy decision to make, so I think it's a little bit more impressive if there was a couple different quarterbacks you could have taken in the middle of the first round and you selected the right one. And that's exactly where we're going to start things off. The Buffalo Bills' best draft pick since 2015 has to be Josh Allen. He was selected 7th overall in that 2018 draft and ended up being one of the best quarterbacks from that class. Another elite quarterback went in that first round. We'll get to him later. Baker Mayfield went 1, Sam Darnold went 3, and Josh Rosen went 10. The Bills made the right decision taking the super athletic quarterback out of Wyoming, and there were a lot of question marks to Josh Allen's game because a lot of scouts and a lot of draft analysts did not like the pick at the time. Josh Allen's rookie season, 10 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and just a 52% completion percentage, but he took strides in 2019. The Bills won 10 games, and then he really broke out in that 2020 season, finishing runner-up in MVP voting, 37 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 4,500 passing yards, can also do it on the ground as well. And basically outside of his rookie year, he has won double-digit games from the Bills. He's already had 4 top 5 MVP finishes, including winning the MVP finally here in 2024. He has just yet to go to the Super Bowl or beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. Either way, though, it is one of the best draft picks since 2015 as a whole in the whole NFL. So I was going back and forth on who I wanted to choose here for the Miami Dolphins. I could talk about Minkah Fitzpatrick, but his peak in the NFL has came with a different team. So I'm going to talk about them selecting Xavier Howard with the 38th overall pick back in the 2016 NFL draft. Xavier Howard played 8 years in the NFL from 2016 to 2023, all with the Miami Dolphins, where he was an all-pro first-team member in 2020, a year where he had 10 interceptions, led the NFL. He also led the NFL in interceptions back in 2018, where he had 7 that year, was selected to all-pro second-team honors, 4 Pro Bowl appearances in his career, and for taking somebody that was at one point a top 5 corner in the sport in the second round is a really good selection for the Dolphins. So I was kind of struggling on who I wanted to go here with the Jets. I think it comes down between 3 players, either Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, or even Jamal Adams. And honestly, I may lean Jamal Adams because the Jets got the 3 best years of Adams' career, basically his rookie year, year number 2 in 2018, where he was an all-pro second-team member, and then in 2019, where he was an all-pro first-team member and a Pro Bowler that year, and then they sold high on him. They traded him to the Seattle Seahawks for multiple first-round picks. One of those ended up being Garrett Wilson, and the other one ended up being Elijah Vera Tucker, which has built a foundation for the Jets team here in 2025, and that's why I think I'm going to give the slight edge to Adams, because the Jets got good years out of him, and then they got good players in return, selling high on Adams, who was never the same after basically his first year in Seattle. A team that did just a wild 180 on their drafting, basically since the year 2015, the New England Patriots. Before then, they had so many good draft picks. James White in the 4th round, Logan Ryan in the 3rd round, Jamie Collins in the 2nd. You can go on and on of just Super Bowl caliber players that they took either in the 1st or later in the draft. But since 2015, either in the Bill Belichick or Elliott Wolf era, the Patriots have been one of the worst drafting teams, maybe the worst drafting team in the NFL. So what I'm going to go with, I'm going to take their 3rd round pick in 2016, Joe Thuney, who helped the Patriots go to 3 Super Bowls, winning against the Atlanta Falcons, losing against the Eagles, and beating the LA Rams. And then he went on to win multiple Super Bowls in Kansas City in 2022 and in 2023 with the Chiefs. And he was still a good player in New England. He was an all-pro second-team member back in that 2019 season, and then he's earned back-to-back all-pro first-team honors in 2023 and in 2024. But I think for the value with the 78th overall pick out of North Carolina State, this was a really good draft pick by the Patriots. Really easy one here for the Baltimore Ravens, who passed up on this player in the 1st round in the 2018 NFL draft to select a tight end, Hayden Hurst. Really embarrassing looking back on it like that, but a bunch of other teams passed up on Lamar Jackson, who the Ravens traded back up into the 1st round to get, the Heisman winning quarterback out of Louisville that has turned into one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in the year 2025. And if you look at his resume, it's a lot better than Josh Allen's because he's got 2 MVP finishes. He was an all-pro first-team member in 2024, but finished runner-up in MVP voting. He may go down as the best dual-threat quarterback in NFL history. This year, he threw 41 touchdowns and just 4 interceptions. And if you look at his rushing stats, they're incredible as well. Over 1,000 rushing yards in 2019 and 2020. Hasn't had under 690 rushing yards in his career. 915 rushing yards in the year 2024. He is a franchise quarterback that has earned a max contract in Baltimore, but like Josh Allen, Allen. He is yet to beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs and go on to the Super Bowl. Also kind of had trouble here for the Cincinnati Bengals because they took Joe Burrow with the #1 overall pick. They took Jamar Chase with the 5th overall pick. You could maybe give a nod to T. Higgins. Trey Hendrickson wasn't drafted by the Bengals. So I'm going to talk about Jesse Bates, who was the 54th overall pick in the 2018 draft out of Wake Forest. And Bates was a really good and consistent safety for the Cincinnati Bengals. He was a big reason why they were able to go to the Super Bowl in the 2021 NFL season, where they at least had above average defense for one of the few times in the Joe Burrow era in Cincinnati. And we definitely feel the loss of Jesse Bates since he left Cincinnati in the 2023 offseason to go to the Falcons. His best season was probably in 2020, where he had 3 interceptions that season, 15 pass deflections, and was an all-pro second team member. But Bengals fans, you could let me know who you would go with down below. So yeah, the Browns have always been picking kind of high, and then they were better later in the 2010s. So yeah, I'm not going to give them credit for drafting Myles Garrett. That was the easy selection with taking him #1 overall. I think taking Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah in the 2nd round was a really good selection, but I'm going to go with Nick Chubb, who is no longer going to be a Brown anymore, which is kind of sad because he was their best running back in quite some time. He was selected with the 35th overall pick in the 2018 draft, and injuries have kind of derailed his career a little bit, but he had 4 straight Pro Bowl appearances from 2019 to 2022. In those years, he averaged around 90 yards per game rushing. He had 1,500 rushing yards in 2019. He had 1,500 rushing yards again in 2022, double-digit touchdowns as well, but then suffered that gruesome knee injury against the Steelers at the start of the 2023 season. He didn't look the same here in 2024, and he is currently not even on the team, but I do think he's been the best Browns draft pick since 2015. And for the Steelers, you got to go with TJ Watt. This team has not done a good job drafting in the 1st round like they've had in the past. Broderick Jones, Kenny Pickett, Najee Harris, Devin Bush, Terrell Edmonds have kind of been disappointments, all 1st-round picks after TJ Watt. And even before TJ Watt, Artie Burns, Bud Dupree, Ryan Shazier, Jarvis Jones, all of those guys either didn't work out or injuries kind of stalled their careers, but TJ Watt has definitely been by far the best 1st-round pick for the Steelers. That was a really successful 2017 draft, and TJ Watt has turned into one of, if not the best defensive player in the NFL. He's led the NFL in sacks in 2020, 2021, where he had 22.5, and in 2023, where he had 19 sacks and got his 1st Defensive Player of the Year. He's got 4 All-Pro first-team honors. He's finished top 5 in Defensive Player of the Year voting 5 different times, including 2 runner-up finishes. He led the NFL in forced fumbles in 2019. He's going to be a Hall of Famer one day. By far the best Steelers draft pick since 2015. So similar before with Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, I'm going to talk about Justin Herbert here for the LA Chargers. A lot of people had question marks about Justin Herbert's accuracy coming out of Oregon, and he has shut those critics up as he's turned into a franchise quarterback here in LA. I know people like to make fun of Justin Herbert because he hasn't gotten it done in the playoffs, and they use the what-if tag with him, but he is still a really good quarterback and a top 10 quarterback you'd want to build around at the NFL level. He won Offensive Rookie of the Year, where he threw for over 4,300 yards in that 2020 season. In 2021, he threw for 5,000 yards and 38 touchdowns. Maybe he hasn't looked the same since 2022, but I feel like when he was healthy in 2024, looked a lot better than he did in 2023. He's got a couple top 10 MVP finishes, and honestly, there's not that many quarterbacks that I would take over Justin Herbert when building a franchise, and the Chargers did a great job going from Phillip Rivers, a franchise quarterback, to Justin Herbert and a franchise guy. I wish my Pittsburgh Steelers took some notes. And then probably the best draft pick as a whole since 2015, the Kansas City Chiefs trading up in the 2017 NFL draft to take one of the best quarterbacks already in NFL history, Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes in 8 years so far since being drafted, a 6-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro first team member, 1-time All-Pro second team member, 2 MVPs, 3 Super Bowl championships, and has lost 2 other Super Bowls. He led the NFL in passing yards in 2022. He led the NFL in touchdowns in 2018 and in 2022 as well. He's been a top 5 quarterback since he's been drafted basically after his first real year in 2018. And honestly, I think after his first year, basically became the best quarterback in the NFL, up there with Brady and Aaron Rodgers. And right now, he's still the consensus #1 quarterback in the league. Maybe he's not the best fantasy quarterback anymore, but I'd still pick him over any other quarterback in the NFL. So yeah, this was definitely the best pick in the 2017 draft and basically any draft pick since 2015. Man, the Las Vegas Raiders / Oakland Raiders have made a lot of bad picks since 2015, but they absolutely hit on their 4th rounder in the 2019 draft, Max Crosby. Yeah, they took Clelin Ferrell with the 4th overall pick, and Max Crosby basically went 100 picks later and was a million times better. Since Crosby's been drafted, he has been a top 10 defender in the sport. He finished runner-up in Defensive Rookie of the Year voting in the 2019 season to Nick Bosa, and over the last 4 years, he's he's been a Pro Bowler every single year. He's got 2 All-Pro second team honors. He finished 4th in Defensive Player of the Year voting after the 2023 season, where he had 14.5 sacks and led the NFL in tackles for loss with 23. You could also give a nod to Brock Bowers, but I think this pick is a little bit more impressive. And for the Denver Broncos, you can give some love to Nick Bonito, a second-round pick that they got in the Von Miller trade. But I'm just going to go with Patrick Surtain, who just won a Defensive Player of the Year award after the end of the 2024 season. He was the 9th overall pick in the 2021 draft and actually went 1 pick after JC Horn. And basically after getting drafted, Surtain, and after his first year, he's basically been a top 3 corner in the sport and is now probably the consensus #1 corner in the NFL. After the 2022 season, he was an All-Pro first team member. He was a Pro Bowler and had 2 interceptions that year. 2023, he had 12 pass deflections and was a Pro Bowler again. And then in 2024, 4 interceptions, 11 pass deflections, 45 tackles, All-Pro first team honors, and also finished #1 in Defensive Player of the Year voting, winning that award as a 24-year-old. For the Houston Texans, this player has obviously destroyed his public perception and his PR in the NFL, but it was probably their best pick because not only was he a good player for them, they absolutely got a haul in return. Yeah, I'm going to go with Deshaun Watson, who was the 12th overall pick in that 2017 draft. So 2 teams had their best draft pick in that 2017 draft that took quarterbacks. Sorry, Bears fans, you're not going to get that honors. But Deshaun Watson was an elite quarterback from 2018 to 2020 in Houston. He was a Pro Bowler 3 straight years. He led the NFL in passing yards in 2020 with 4,823. He threw 33 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. He did not play at all in 2021. And then the Houston Texans got an absolute haul for him. Multiple draft picks that have helped them turn into guys like Will Anderson, Tank Dell, Kalen Bullock, Kamari Lassiter, Damian Pierce, Kenyon Green, Jamal Hill. Yeah, this was an absolute haul for Deshaun Watson, and then they were able to build those pieces around CJ Stroud, their next franchise quarterback going forward. And I know what he did off the field. I know he's not a good player for the Cleveland Browns, but this is definitely the best pick, in my opinion, for the Houston Texans since 2015. Also, a similar trend here for the Jacksonville Jaguars. We are going to go with Jalen Ramsey, who was the 5th overall pick back in the 2016 draft. They got some elite years out of Jalen Ramsey. He was an All-Pro first team member in 2017, as well as a Pro Bowler in 2017, 2018, 2019, and was looked at as a top 3 corner and a top defensive back in all of the NFL. And then they were able to trade him for 2 first-round picks, and those first-round picks haven't really worked out. Cleavon Chason and Travis Etienne, but still getting 2 first-round picks after 4 years of elite production, a player that helped you go to the AFC Championship game in the 2017 season. But if you think it should be somebody else like a Joshua Hines-Allen or a Brian Thomas Jr., I'm okay with that. For the Indianapolis Colts, we are going to go with the 6th overall pick in that 2018 draft. Yeah, they could have drafted guys like Josh Allen, Roquan Smith, but they also could have messed up this pick as well. They selected somebody that has turned into the best interior lineman in the NFL, Quentin Nelson. Quentin Nelson's first 3 years in the NFL, All-Pro first team honors. That is an incredible feat. He's also been a Pro Bowler every single year of his 7-year career, and like I said, has been the best interior offensive lineman, and I think he is still the best offensive lineman on the interior today, now that guys like Jason Kelsey and Zach Martin have retired. And then also another easy one here for the Tennessee Titans. That is going to be their 45th overall pick in the 2016 draft. Somebody that gave them 8 elite years at the running back position, Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry has been one of the best running backs in the league since being drafted. He won Offensive Player of the Year in the 2020 season, where he ran for over 2,000 yards and had 17 touchdowns. He also led the NFL in touchdowns in 2019 with 16, and rushing yards as well with over 1,500 yards, and has just been one of the more dominant power backs in the NFL that we have seen this century. And I know he wasn't on the Titans in 2024, but he showed that he can age like fine wine as a running back in today's modern NFL, where he had 16 touchdowns and 1,900 yards. I wish he was still a tight end, but either way, that is their best pick since 2016. The New York Giants, I'm going to go with their 2nd first-round pick in the 2019 draft. They took Daniel Jones with the first one, but they took an elite player with the 17th overall pick that has turned into the best defensive tackle in the year 2025, Dexter Lawrence. He was probably a top 3 defensive tackle, but as long as Aaron Donald was in the NFL, that was never going to happen. But over the last 3 years, he's been a Pro Bowler, an All-Pro second team member, has gotten a massive extension by the Giants, and had 9 sacks as a defensive tackle in 12 games in 2024. He is an absolute beast and is in the prime of his career right now as a 27-year-old. There's 2 different players that you could pick here for the Dallas Cowboys, in my opinion. You could either go with Micah Parsons or you can go with CeeDee Lamb. I'm going to go with CeeDee Lamb. He was picked after Micah Parsons in a different draft. He was the 17th overall pick in the 2020 draft, where there was a bunch of receivers taken. Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, all went ahead of CeeDee Lamb, and they took CeeDee Lamb over Justin Jefferson, but also over Jalen Reagor, Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins, and Michael Pittman as well. And Lamb is basically a top 3 receiver in the sport right now. He's been a Pro Bowler each of the last 4 years, was an All-Pro first team member after the 2023 season, where he led the NFL in receptions with 135 and 1,749 yards, and is a wide receiver 1 at 26 years old. And there's maybe 2 other receivers in the NFL in the year 2025 that I would take over CD. Okay, I know I said I didn't want to go with high picks here, but I'm going to go with that for the Washington Commanders, a team that hasn't really had the best drafting history either since 2015, because they've taken some disappointing players like Josh Doxson, Dwayne Haskins, Chase Young, Jamin Davis, Jahan Dotson. There's been some good picks as well, but I'm just going to go with Jaden Daniels, who I feel like has turned this franchise around and has done a complete 180 on also just their public perception and how much people want to be fans of the Commanders. Yeah, that can also go to ownership, but Jaden Daniels has just played 1 year in the NFL, 25 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He won Rookie of the Year. He brought the Commanders team that did not have a high win season projection to the NFC Championship game. He also ran for 891 yards this year. And yeah, they could have taken Drake May as well. That was definitely in the card. So I do think this is an impressive pick for Washington. And then I was also struggling to go here for the Philadelphia Eagles. Some really good draft picks. You could go with Jordan Mailata, who was turned into one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL, and he was taken in the 7th round of the 2018 draft. 233rd overall, and I'd be perfectly okay if you went with him because that is just an insane return on your investment. I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts, though, who just helped the Philadelphia Eagles win a Super Bowl, the biggest feat of them all, and he was a 2nd round pick, 53rd overall in the 2020 draft. People were talking about Hurts being a tight end in the NFL because of what he did at Oklahoma, and he was drafted to a team that already had their franchise quarterback and Carson Wentz. And Hurts has just done a great job and has just won since he became the starter, where he's got a 45-17 record as a starter from 2021 to 2024. The Eagles went 12-3 this year. He threw for 2,900 yards, 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He can get it done on the ground as well. He runs the tush push better than anybody in the league, and he just won a Super Bowl for the Eagles. That has to be your best pick. Also, 2 different players you can go here for the Detroit Lions. You could go with Kirby Joseph, who was a little bit later of a pick than the guy that I'm going to choose, and that's Penei Sewell, who was the 7th overall pick in the 2021 draft, but he's been one of, if not the best offensive tackle in the league since being drafted. 3 straight Pro Bowls, back-to-back All-Pro first team honors, and has been that franchise offensive tackle that has been protecting Jared Goff over the last few years, and it is a big reason why they've one of the best rushing attacks in the league since he's been drafted. The Chicago Bears could have a couple different guys. You could talk about Eddie Jackson. I'm just going to talk about Roquan Smith, who was the 8th overall pick in that 2018 draft, and gave the Chicago Bears some elite years. They never should have let him go, to be honest with you. In 2020, All-Pro second team member. In 2021, All-Pro second team member as well. And he ended up being an All-Pro first team member. And he spent half the games with the Chicago Bears and then half for the Ravens. They traded him for a 2023 second round pick, which ended up being Gervin Dexter. Could have been a lot worse. I'm going to go with Smith here, but Bears fans, you can let me know if you think it should be someone else. The Minnesota Vikings. I'm going to talk about Stephon Diggs, who was the 5th round pick for the Vikings in the 2015 draft, 146th overall. He spent 5 years in Minnesota, where he accumulated over 360 receptions, over 4,600 yards. He was their true wide receiver 1 with Adam Thielen as the wide receiver 2 for Kirk Cousins. And then they got some elite years out of Diggs, and then they traded him to the Buffalo Bills in a win-win trade that netted them a 1st round pick in the 2020 draft, and they used that on Justin Jefferson. So yeah, this draft pick has worked out for the Vikings with Stephon Diggs and the return they got for Stephon Diggs. And even though Diggs had an unreal season in 2020, over 1,500 yards, All-Pro first team member, it doesn't matter. The Vikings have arguably the best receiver in the NFL now on their team. I think there's 2 different guys here. You can go for the Green Bay Packers. You could talk about Jordan Love, who was a 1st round pick in that 2020 draft. Definitely a risky one at the time, and it worked out for them. You could also talk about Jair Alexander, who was the 18th overall pick in the 2018 draft. Honestly, I'm going to go with Jordan Love, actually, because this was such a big risk at the time. This was the COVID draft. They still had Aaron Rodgers as their franchise quarterback, but they wanted to have a plan B, a succession plan to Aaron Rodgers when he was eventually no longer going to be the Packers franchise quarterback. And Love has blossomed into a very good starter. He threw for over 4,000 yards in his first year as a starter in 2023, even helped them win a playoff game, beating the Cowboys on the road, and gave the 1-seeded Niners a tough test in the divisional round. He threw for 32 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. This year, the numbers did go down, but it's still a positive quarterback. But I think the risk involved here and the investment they put into Love, it's worked out. It's their best pick since 2015. Kind of a shocking one here for the Seattle Seahawks. I'm going to go with their 69th overall pick in the 3rd round of the 2015 draft, Tyler Lockett. The production they've gotten out of Lockett over the last decade as a third round pick has been amazing. He had over 1,000 yards every single year from 2019 to 2022. Sometimes was a wide receiver 1, sometimes was a wide receiver 2, but has basically been a super reliable receiving threat for the Seahawks since being drafted. He was also an elite kick/punt returner when he got drafted back in 2015, and that earned him all-pro first-team honors as a rookie. Yeah, I think this was their best selection by far. The Arizona Cardinals, I'm just going to go with Budda Baker, who was the 36th overall pick in the second round of the 2017 draft, and has turned into an elite safety for them since being drafted. He's basically been a Pro Bowler 7 out of the 8 years after being drafted. He was an all-pro first-team member in his rookie year, all-pro first team in 2020, and was on all-pro second team in 2024, and was a lot better than their first-round pick in that 2017 draft, Hassan Reddick, who pretty much only gave them one really good year, and that was the last year of his contract there in Arizona. I was going back and forth on which receiver I wanted to choose here for the LA Rams. Just because he's only had one elite year so far, I'm not going to go with Puka, even though it was a little bit later than the guy I'm going to go with, and that is Cooper Kupp, who was the 69th overall pick in the 2017 draft. He spent 8 years with the Rams, including winning a triple crown in the 2021 season. 145 receptions, 1,947 yards, and 16 touchdowns. Led the NFL in each of those 3 categories. All-pro first-team honors, 3rd in MVP voting. Kupp really has only had one elite year, and that was in 2021. He's had some good years, though, in 2019 and 2020, but injuries have pretty much derailed the last 3 years of his career. But for what they got after taking him in the 3rd round in the 2017 draft and helped them win a Super Bowl in 2021, I do believe this is the best pick for the Rams over the last decade. And you can go with a bunch of different guys here for the San Francisco 49ers. You could talk about Brock Purdy, who was the last pick in the 22 draft and basically saved that window for them because of how bad the Trey Lance trade has worked out. You could go with Fred Warner, 70th overall pick in the 2018 draft. I'm going to go with a 5th round pick, though, in the 2017 draft, 146th overall, George Kittle, who has turned into one of the best tight ends in the league since being drafted, multiple All-Pro first-team honors, has turned into one of the best, if not the best, blocking tight end in the NFL. He's gotten 6 Pro Bowlers, too, since being drafted, and has had over 1,000 yards 4 different times in his career. He had 11 touchdowns in the 2022 season, and just got rewarded another big extension by the Niners. You can basically go with anybody for the New Orleans Saints from that 2017 class. Mickey Loomis cooked with that one, hasn't really cooked since. I'm going to go with their 3rd round pick, 67th overall from that class, Alvin Kamara. This Kamara has been one of the best running backs in the league since being drafted. Maybe a little bit better of a fantasy player than you can say than actual production in the league, because he's never had over 1,000 rushing yards, which is kind of crazy. 950 in 2024, 932 in 2020, but he's also just been an elite receiving back as well. He had over 800 receiving yards as a rookie. He won Rookie of the Year that season. He's got multiple All-Pro second-team honors, 5 straight Pro Bowls to start off his career, and is still a productive running back as a 29-year-old in the year 2024. A couple different guys here you can go for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You could talk about Quan Alexander. I'm just going to go with Tristan Wirfs, who was the 13th overall pick in the 2020 draft. And that 2020 draft had a lot of offensive tackles drafted highly. Andrew Thomas at 4, Jedrick Wills at 10, Mekhi Becton at 11, and they ended up taking Tristan Wirfs over guys like Austin Jackson or Isaiah Wilson with the 13th overall pick, and he has been elite for them since being drafted. He's gotten 4 straight Pro Bowls, including 2 All-Pro first-team honors, one in 2021 and one in 2024, and helped them win a Super Bowl as a rookie in that 2020 season. The Carolina Panthers, they've also done a good job drafting highly in the 1st round. I'm going to go with their 1st round pick, 8th overall in the 2017 draft, Christian McCaffrey, because they got some really good years out of CMC. 5.5 years from Christian McCaffrey. He had over 3,900 rushing yards, 32 rushing touchdowns, and in the receiving department, he had 3,200 receiving yards and 18 receiving touchdowns as well. He ended up being an All-Pro second-team member in 2018, All-Pro first-team member in 2019, including finishing 3rd in Offensive Player of the Year voting, and then was traded to the San Francisco 49ers in the middle of the 2022 season. And they didn't really hit on those draft picks that they got in return for CMC, including guys like Jonathan Mingo or DJ Johnson, but I think he was still their best draft pick since 2015. And lastly, for the Atlanta Falcons, it comes down between 2 players. One is either AJ Terrell, the other is Chris Lindstrom. Lindstrom may be a little bit better in his specific position than AJ Terrell, but if you look at that 1st round corner class of 2020, guys like Jeff Okudah, CJ Henderson, Damon Arnett, Noah Igbenogany, and Jeff Gladney, yeah, AJ Terrell was the only good corner drafted in the 1st round of that class. So I'm going to go with AJ Terrell here for the Atlanta Falcons, who has been an elite corner since being drafted. He was an All-Pro second-team member in 2021. Honestly, doesn't have that many accolades, but I do think he is one of the more underrated corners in the NFL, and is one of the very few good players on that Atlanta Falcons defense. So that is going to be for me. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of your team selections, or if you have any other similar video ideas. is. Let me know down below. Drop a thumbs up if you guys did enjoy. Subscribe if you're not already. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.